In this video, I will be making fresh apple pie filling and flaky dough crust. To start off, I will be taking 2 pounds of apples and I will be peeling them, coring them, and slicing them. When slicing these apples, I will make sure they are small enough to be able to cook through. After each apple that has been sliced and the core has been taken out, it will go back in a bowl to be able to mix the other ingredients with. After all the apples have been sliced and cored, I will start making the dough for the pie crust. To start off with the pie crust, I will be taking 2½ cups of pastry flour and leveling it off with a knife and then putting it in a mixing bowl. Next, I will be taking 1 teaspoon of salt and adding it to the bowl. And I will be adding 2 teaspoons of sugar, also along to the mixing bowl. Next, I will be mixing all the dry ingredients together. After mixing all the dry ingredients together, I will be taking 8 ounces of butter and cutting them into small slices to be able to cut into the dry ingredients. And right now, this is the second half of the 8 ounces of butter that I need to cut into small slices. Now I will take a pastry cutter and cut the butter into the dry ingredients until the butter is about the size of a pea. After I cut the butter, I took ice water and drained it, and I am now pouring it into the mixture to be able to make that dough form. After I put the cold water in, I am taking my hands and folding the dough together to be able to shape the form of a ball. After the ball of dough is formed, I took a knife and cut it into two pieces, and then I took each piece and wrapped it in plastic wrap to form a slightly circle shape, and then it is going to cool in the fridge until it is firm. Now to start again with the apple filling, I took all the apples I sliced, and I took 1 ounce of butter to put into the skillet also. While mixing all the apples together, I added 3 ounces of sugar along with it so it could cook. While the apples were cooking, I measured out 2 ounces of cold water and then 0.7 ounces of cornstarch to make a slurry. Next, I combined the water and the cornstarch together, and I started mixing until there was no more thickness to it. After the slurry was not thick anymore, I added it to the apples, and then I started stirring so it could all combine. Next, I combined 3.5 ounces sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, a 4th teaspoon of nutmeg, and I mixed those in with the apples while they were still cooking. Next, I added the 0.25 ounces to the apples. Then I took 2 teaspoons of lemon juice and added them to the apples while they were still cooking. Next, after the pie crust had gotten a chance to cool, I had put it on a floured surface and taken a floured rolling pin and started slightly rolling it out and making sure to keep a round shape. After I had gotten the pie crust flattened out, I took the rolling pin and wrapped the pie crust around it to be able to put the pie crust in the pie pan carefully to make sure there was no splits. After the pie crust got put in the pan, there were extras around it, so I was just taking kitchen shears and cutting off the extras that weren't needed. After the bottom layer was done, I started on the top layer for the pie and I rolled it out the same way careful to keep the round shape and making sure it was flat enough to put on top. Then I had taken the apples off the stove to let them cool, and now I am putting them in the pie crust to be able to bake. Next, I had taken the pie crust and rolled it with a rolling pin to be able to put on top of the apple pie, and careful enough to make sure it did not break. Again, there were some excess pieces that didn't need to be there, so I am just taking my kitchen shears again and cutting off the excess pieces. Now I am carefully pinching the bottom crust and the top crust together so I am able to crimp it later. Now I am just folding the dough under itself so it can all stay inside the pie pan. Although it was kind of tricky, I am crimping the edges of the pie pan so everything can stay in while it bakes. After I crimped the edges, I made a X at the top of the pie. After everything was done, I put the pie in the oven and I set the timer to 25 minutes. After the 25 minutes, I had taken the pie out of the oven and I cut a piece out to show what the inside looked like. Finally, this is what the finished product looked like.